You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear.
Here we go. We got to live up to the name, Matt. We got to create and enhance conversations. So
we do our best, man.
Let's see if we can accomplish that today. The world is in chaos in many ways. The footwear marketplace is in chaos. I don't know. There's so many things going on, and I feel like this podcast helps us talk to different people across the industry about what they're seeing, their perspective, the work that they're doing. And it allows other people to maybe not feel alone in the fear. So some therapy goes on here on our podcast,
sure.
But also hopefully some solutions and ideas to help people move forward and strengthen our industry and their businesses along the way. So it's always great to have industry leaders join us on our podcast and give us some great insight. So with that, Matt, tee us up. Who we got today?
Yeah, man. So this is a return contestant, which we don't always have. Some people will come back, which is shocking to me, and I know it is to you, Andy. But Greg Tunney, who's the president and CEO of Manitobah Mukluks, is here to join us in Shoe and Show, and he's brought a friend who's going to help us have a conversation around DE&I, which is super important. And that friend is Daman Morissette, who's director of social impact at Manitobah Mukluks. Mr. Tunney, welcome back to the Shoe and Show. You're an industry vet. Before we kind of dive into the DE&I conversation that you are passionate about and Damon's passionate about, tell us about Manitobah Mukluks, man. How long you been there? What's hot and heavy right now? And then we'll get going on DE&I.
No, I'd love to. Great to talk to you again, Matt. Great to talk to you, Andy. Be back with the team. You guys continue to do some amazing work at FDRA, and just glad for everything that you guys are doing for the industry out there and really making a difference. So I am part of Manitobah Mukluks, and Manitobah Mukluks is a purpose-driven company based on social impact of making positive impact with indigenous communities throughout North America. And they have been doing this for 25 years. It started with a founder whose name was Sean McCormick, who is Métis and who is indigenous, who actually sits as our chief impact officer as well as a board member as well. And he started as a furrier and a trapper. And his family had been boot makers for, centuries. I mean, that's quite frankly how the Métis and the First Nations lived up in Canada is if they didn't have good boots to survive in, they wouldn't have survived for thousands of years. So with the influence of his family, they said, hey, instead of just being a furrier and a trapper, why don't you start making mukluks? And so he actually started the craft of making genuine Manitoba mukluks and selling them to the public. And so it's an interesting brand. It's a brand that's bigger in Canada than Uggs is in Canada. It's a brand that's in Scandinavian countries like Sweden, Norway, et cetera, that is bigger as well. And so we have boots that start at $150 and go up to $3,000 that we do in real blue fox, for example. And the reason why they use blue fox, why do you use blue fox? And the reason why is because blue fox will not, it's a natural waterproof. It won't seep through. That's why foxes can be out in the natural. So great company that has been doing some amazing things. And I think the founder, Sean, was probably 25 years ahead of anybody when it came to DEI, when it came to social impact, because that have been the roots of the company ever since. And quite frankly, that's what got me to the company. I've been in the shoe industry, as you know, Matt and Andy, for 25 years, 30 years now. And I could really go and do anything I wanted. And this was something that I really saw an opportunity to make an impact in and on a social basis. And it's really been an amazing journey. This last weekend, we just had our grand opening of our flagship store in Winnipeg, Canada. Cool. 3,000 square foot store. It is a retail experience like you've never seen. When you come in as a consumer, you actually Yes, you can buy boots, and yes, you can buy shirling and everything else. But at the same time, we have beading classes. We have every day we do a smudge. And if you don't know what a smudge is, that's a indigenous ceremony using smoke. And we actually got approval from the mall. We actually use sage, which is a white smoke that doesn't trigger off the alarms. And so it's a big tour spot. We're actually at a place called the Forks, where for thousands of years, indigenous communities have come together where the forks of the river come and traded. And that's where this mall is. And it's something that we think very special and a very sacred place for us to be at. So it's our first flagship store. We're launching 4 more stores over the next 45 days. And so the brand is growing pretty rapidly. I just wanted to introduce Daman. Daman is our Director of Social Impact. Daman, why don't you just tell them a little bit about yourself? Daman is new to the company. And why don't you just tell them, take a couple of minutes just to tell them about yourself and what you're working on.
Yeah, no problem. I want to start, Matt, Andy, thanks for having me on. Greg, for having me here too. Glad to be a part of Manitobah Mukluks. Originally, I'm a Anishinaabe from Saugeen First Nation in Canada, so really being a part of Manitobah Mukluks is bringing a part of my culture, who I am, and representing the Indigenous community in a good way. Like myself and other employees here, the reason why we're here is because of the purpose-driven impact that we have. You know, it's all about giving back. It's all about reciprocity. It's all about connection and working together and creating spaces for Indigenous people to share our artwork, share our stories, and create a place where we're represented anywhere. So there's a lot of good things that's happening over at Manitoba. I look after the social impact initiatives, which could be broken down into our 4 pillars, which is art and action, education for change, trade for community, and sovereignty through leadership. Each one of these pillars have a goal set to it. So I'll give you an example. Art in Action is our initiative to make sure that we're continuing to create as much opportunities as possible for Indigenous artisans to share their work, tell their stories, and to have artwork that's reflective of their communities. So working together, working with community is a big thing that we have, and we want to continue to be the best at it and create as many opportunities for these Indigenous artisans, up-and-coming artisans. Another initiative we have is Education for Change. Education for Change is connected to our Story Boot School. So founder Sean McCormick started the Story Boot School, which is now an initiative to preserve, continue, and make sure that the art of moccasin and mukluk making does not die. So it's our initiative to make sure that the next generation have these teachings, have those connections to the land, to their ancestors, and the practices that have been in our communities for thousands of years. Another initiative that we have over in social impact is Trade for Community. So on our website we have this what we call the Indigenous market, where any Indigenous artisan can come, sell their product, get 100% of the proceeds to their pocket. We take care of shipping and freight. So again, it's just another initiative to make sure that we're creating a platform for these artisans to share their work and to earn a viable income. And the other thing is sovereignty through leadership. And Greg touched on it right there. I've never worked for a company that allows you to incorporate some of these our indigenous practices, our spiritual practices like cleansing, smudging, ceremonial practices. We had a pipe ceremony to bless the space and our headquarters. So we had 2 elders come in. We had a ceremony with staff, and we talked about what that meant. Really, one of the most important things, and it kind of goes over my head sometimes because we're working in such a fast industry, is all these leathers, all these furs, they come from somewhere that has a life, that has a spirit. So it's essentially giving thanks for everything that we have. The people who were part of Manitobah Mukluks' journey and helped us get to where we are today. So really that those are a little bit of a quick overview of some of the impacts or social impacts and the initiatives that we have over at Manitoba.
Right. Yeah, no, I love that, Daman. It's super cool. And then when you look at the product is beautiful. And Greg, you think about kind of where the industry is now and where consumers are now. Authenticity is really important. Brand story is really important. And engagement with the artisans that make products is really important. So everything's craft beer and candle wax this and homemade honey here. And so we're gravitating to consumers towards that authenticity. And it sounds like, to your point, Sean was ahead of his time because you've been doing that for a long, long time now at the start of the brand. And so talk more about the importance of the consumer's desire, one, on the social impact side, which Daman so eloquently laid out, but also on people like good product, right? They want to see where that product came from and who made that product. And it seems like you're checking all those boxes at Manitobah Mukluks.
Yeah, Matt, the thing that I've seen at retail right now is retail has changed more in the last 24 months than it's changed in the last 30 years of my career. And the fact of the matter is the day of labels are dead at retail. And if you have just a label, the consumers don't care about. Consumers today, especially millennial consumers, are looking for brands that are real, that are authentic, and that are really making a true social impact in regards to human rights, DEI, sustainability, and the world in general. And so, if all you have is a label, then you're probably going to be at a place like Sears. And there's a reason why Sears went out of business. All they had was a bunch of labels. They didn't have true brands. And I think today that we're living in a world of labels, a lot of labels, and very few brands, and very few purpose-driven brands. And I would tell you right now in the footwear industry, and that's what drove me to this company, is if you take the entire footwear industry, I'd say 90% of the footwear companies are not purpose-driven. They just really aren't. And then when you get to about, how many actually make social impact, 95% of them are not making social impact. And then today what they're talking about is they're talking about brands that are deep. They call them deep purpose brands. And, what is a deep purpose brand? A deep purpose brand would be somebody like Patagonia. And you saw the airwaves yesterday blow up with Jan Chenard yesterday announcing that he gave away his company. And really for the purpose of making social impact, of saving the planet. And so the ability to have a purpose-driven brand, or in our case, a deep purpose-driven brand, I think makes all the difference. And a lot of people will talk about, no, we're a purpose-driven brand, Greg, don't worry about it. Yeah, we're there. We recently, and you got to realize we're owned by private equity, part of us. We still have indigenous ownership, but we recently had to reincorporate our articles in confederation of incorporation with Delaware, because articles of incorporation with Delaware basically say that you first and foremost serve the shareholder. And so if you look at any public company, the first thing that's going to show on them is they are committed to the shareholder only. Okay. We actually had to change our, and because of our social impact company and because we're a purpose-driven company, we changed that. Actually, our articles of incorporation actually say that we're actually here for our social impact reason, not for our shareholders. And I don't know of any private equity group that would approve that, and ours did. And so, you got to really put your words, your money where your mouth is. And so, I know that people will listen to this and say, oh, no, he's got it wrong. We're a purpose-driven company. Trust us and everything else. And they're really not. You can just go to their articles of incorporation, and right there, it'll tell you right up front that they're not. So we think that we're on to something really special. We think that it's something that consumers are really looking at. And, everything that we do, to give you an example, we have almost 50% of our total employee base are actually indigenous employees. We have almost 30% of our C-suite are indigenous. We have 32% of our board of directors are actually indigenous. I would challenge you, Matt and Andy, go find a company that is American private equity owned and actually have indigenous members at the table. And we thought that was really critical to what we were doing. We just couldn't say it was important to us. We actually had to bring them to the table. So I think that we're really onto something that consumers are reacting to, they're responding to. I think in your questions about the craft and what we're trying to do, our 4 pillars, the first pillar is art and action. We currently have 17 different indigenous artists that are helping design our product, and we're paying them at market rates, and they're getting exposed to the world market. That's really an interesting part. Where he talked to you about the education for change. I mean, we actually have college programs that are sponsored by Manitoba that you can go to. You can get college credit, and you can learn about mukluk making and the history behind it. And what this is doing is bringing communities together that are learning the history so that this isn't lost, this art of mukluk making. So when you say, gosh, those are really beautiful and everything else, this is just not some designer sitting on Madison Avenue or anything else. This is actually an indigenous artist that is taking this trade or this art that they've learned from generations down and bringing it to the public.
That's awesome. So, Greg, how many pairs do you have?
It's interesting being in Park City. Our boots are very identifiable. If my wife walked down Main Street in Park City, which, by the way, we're at the turn of the year, we're actually going to be putting our own store on Main Street in Park City. But if my wife walks down the street and has a pair of Uggs or Sorel on, for example, nobody will say a word to her. They'll just kind of common. She has a pair of Mukluks on. People will come up to her and actually ask her, where did you get them? Where can I buy them? And I've never seen that in my entire career where people will stop her because they're so identifiable in what they're doing. A lot of people look at them and say, oh, they're just kind of this artist, type boot, but actually they have very high performance. All of our boots are all waterproof. Our competition is not. If you look at our warmth factor, we go down to 32 degrees below zero. So there's some real performance characteristics to this brand that make it unique. People will see my wife where they've got a pair of long stringy fringe on the boot, and people will say, oh, isn't that beautiful, the fringe? Well, actually, it's indigenous. And the reason why they had the fringe on the boots is because as they were walking through the fields, the fringe actually knocks the flies and the bugs off their legs. So there was actually a performance element to it. It just wasn't an artistic thing that, many of us are familiar with.
Really cool.
Yeah. So it's just a great story. And I just really wanted to kind of do my last chapter of my career in something I thought I could really make a difference in the community. And I grew up in the Southwest. I grew up in Phoenix. I grew up in a state that actually has more land owned by indigenous communities. Like the Navajo Nation is actually the largest landowner in the entire state of Arizona. So I was exposed to indigenous communities growing up in Phoenix. And this is just a wonderful opportunity for me to get more involved in it.
So what's you were talking about how obviously you're growing the footprint. Can you share a little bit about your strategy? Like, how are you looking to expand a little bit and grow? Are you looking to grow online? Are you looking to grow like in Europe or Asia, or what's your focus?
No, great question, Andy. Manitoba, they really saw like the province of Manitoba being the world. And they really, they had a very successful business, didn't really see themselves going too far out of it. And part of the white paper when we looked at acquiring the business was this idea of expansion and what that would look like. So, for example, for this fall, we will be launching in Dillard's. We'll actually be doing store activations in malls where we bring in indigenous dancers, indigenous drummers, and actually have a chance where consumers get to actually have a retail experience with us. We'll be in Nordstrom's, we'll be in Neiman Marcus, we'll be with Zappos, and we'll also be in Sundance catalog and stores as well. So we have a very selected retail strategy in the United States. We're actually not opening up any independents at this point. And then international, we'll be opening up Korea this year, as well as Japan the following year. And then we also have a pretty nice northern Scandinavian area that really resonates to our brand. It's really interesting. You'll go onto our indigenous marketplace where these are hand-sewn indigenous boots. They start at $1,500 boots and go on up. And it's interesting. We'll get a consumer in East Berlin, Germany, who says, "I want this boot." And the reason why they want the boot is because there is a mystique about this Native American, indigenous culture, and they want to be part of it. And so I just find it funny when I see a boot being sent to East Germany that are looking for this authentic experience that they can have with the brand.
Yeah, and now that the Berlin Wall has fallen, then we got the opportunity to make billions with it.
Well said.
Hat tip: Gorbachev did pass away recently, and I think we never really do this, and we don't. But hat tip to Gorbachev for a peaceful transition, which could have gone completely different way. But that just sidebar for it's all East Germany. Throw it in there. The man with the jelly on his head.
Yeah.
We got it. Cool. Well, as you guys go forward, we want to, have you guys back and let us know how the expansion's going. We want to know how the social impact's going, because obviously as you guys can grow more, you can do more locally. And I think that's really impactful and keeping that alive. And I think this is something people can learn from too, about how they look at purpose and look at their business. And as we head forward, I feel like consumers are becoming more critical, is a good way, not cynical, but critical at looking at claims, both for sustainability, but also just purpose and what's happening. And I think they're educating themselves more and diving deeper. And so I think this is an important conversation to have for our industry as we go forward.
Yeah, I think you're right. Consumers are willing to go in, they're willing to research, they're willing to find out if you're the real deal. And the great news for Manitoba is they have had the indigenous community, the indigenous elders who support and identify with this brand. We're doing it the right way. And, that I think in itself is extremely critical in this process, that we have the top artists in the world. One thing that most American consumers aren't very aware of is social appropriations, cultural appropriations. And we really are the poster child of how you do it right, and how that you're not abusing cultural appropriations in the marketplace. And it happens a lot in our industry because fashion likes to go over and grab those things, and it's not appropriate to do that. I can go on Main Street, Park City right now and go through gallery after gallery, and you can't find an indigenous artist that has done a painting on all the galleries that are there. You go in there and you say, hey, this is a great painting, I'd like to buy it. It's a beautiful indigenous picture. And it's like, yeah, the artist is from Europe. And so that's cultural appropriations. And so we're really trying to do this the right way and educate people about the importance of identifying with that.
Yeah, well said. And as always, I do have a suggestion for you from the mind of Polk.
Free of charge. Free of charge.
Yeah, here we go. They're always free of charge. Try to, at least. But as you go through and you start to do, when you're going into stores and you're doing these ceremonies, I feel like you need almost like a band when they put up their tour schedule. You need like a schedule and you need a T-shirt, right? Like World Tour 2023. Like start to outline that where you're going to be, and Daman, get on that, brother. I mean, that's what it's all about. It's a whole thing. It's a whole movement. It's not just one thing. I think it's a whole movement.
That was free of charge.
We need to add that. Last thing that I'll share with you that I think has been amazing about this brand is my ability to recruit and bring people into the company has been amazing. I'll give you an example. A little company like ours, and our chief branding officer is a guy by the name of Aaron Carpenter. Aaron Carpenter was the marketing officer at Levi, and after that he was at North Face when they went from 500 million to 1.5 billion. And you might say, well, how did Aaron Carpenter join your team? And the fact of the matter is when he heard our story and I introduced him to our story, Aaron came to me and said, I'm ready to join. How fast can I join? I don't even care what I get paid. I want to be part of this because I know what it means out in the marketplace. And so, whether it's him, whether it's Kenny B on our product team that was at Timberland for 23 years, we have been able to bring in an amazing amount of talent because they see the story and they see what we're doing. And that's really a fun part of my job.
That's awesome. Really cool.
That's awesome. Well, it's been fascinating to hear what you're doing, the brand's purpose, the actual work in the community to build community, the efforts to expand the footprint of the brand in order to feed it back into the community. So we, for me and Matt, I think we've really enjoyed this conversation, and really look forward to the work that you're doing and rooting you on for success. and excited to see these shoes out and about. I'm people know I'm not a huge fashion person, so I appreciate the story about functionality with the tassels. I can relate to that, right? Like, I can appreciate that. But Greg, thanks so much. Damon, thanks so much for coming on today and sharing. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much, guys. Good to see you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
Shoe and Show. You can go to shoeandshow.com and see our entire catalog. We've had some great conversations as of late about footwear marketplace issues, operations, culture inside companies. So go back and take a listen. Share it with your colleagues. And as always, every Monday there's a new episode dropping. So we appreciate you listening. And until next time, Shoe In is out.
Shoe In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.